Hello, ladies. Welcome back to the Black Girls of Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Brianna Lightfoot-Smith, founder and chief connector at Black Girls of Purpose. And I am so excited to introduce you all to one of a woman who has become a friend over the past year. And offline, we were just talking about how this episode is almost like a year to the date that we met. And so it's really cool how God brings those things back around. But her name is Christa Clarke, and she is the founder of Cubicles to Cocktails. So I'll read you her bio, and then we'll jump in. Inspired by a series of post-work happy hours with her friends and mentor, Christa Clarke launched Cubicles to Cocktails in 2018. Happy hour was a space for her to share and gain advice on navigating corporate life as a Black woman. Conducting her research and speaking to the women of color in her network, she discovered that many women of color face the same issues that she had previously commiserated over happy hours with friends, feelings of isolation from being the only at work, compounded by a lack of development opportunities, addressing their unique work needs. However, unlike herself, Christa noted many people didn't have access to a mentor or a strong network of success-minded career women that looked like them. Christa believes that every woman deserves a network and resources to enable her to excel in her career while flourishing in her life. She has made it her mission to help make this every woman's reality. She's an alumna of Rice University, earning both her Bachelor's of Science in Bioengineering and Master of Science in Bioscience Research and Health Policy. Hailing from Chicagoland, which is where my boo is from, Christa is a proud Houstonian known for her infectious laughter, which is serious, y'all. If you ever go to her events, you will know the laugh that we're talking about, and her genuine desire to see women thrive. When she's not cheering on other women, you can find Christa learning about cocktail culture and volunteering with her husband on the Houston Museum of Natural Science Catalyst Young Professional Steering Committee. So I am so excited to introduce you to Christa. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Bree, for having me. It's so good to chat with you, and thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've been trying to get together for a minute, and I think everybody is just learning that whole scheduling, rescheduling, just kind of flow of things, right? And then also, me and you have talked a lot about being conscious of what's on our plate. So not always saying yes just because it's an opportunity, but really saying, do I have the bandwidth for this? And then if I do, how can I make this work within the timing that I've set for it? So I want you to tell our listeners a little bit about themselves. People who have been listening know that that's always my first question, a little bit about yourself that we would not read on your bio.
Right. Oh my God. Okay. Well, not on my bio, but it's on my Instagram bio right now. I'm a blurred. I am a Black nerd. I love science, especially anything health science and public health related. My first side hustle was actually bartending. When I was living in DC, I went ahead and got my bartender's license. I didn't have many friends out in DC. Being new there, I had two friends out there. And we lived on different sides of the city. So I had plenty of time to just explore some hobbies of mine. And that's how I fell in love with cocktail culture. And like you mentioned, I'm from Chicagoland. I grew up in South Holland, Illinois. Went to Marian Catholic High School. Did color guard. So I'm an introvert, but color guard helped for me to be able to perform and to have confidence in front of large crowds. We performed in front of thousands of people at nationals. So that's a few fun facts about me.
Yeah, those are definitely fun facts and not something that I would guess or would say, okay, I bet you did color guard in high school, so that's pretty cool. And I love that you even talked about how that positioned you even now to be able to be in public spaces. Because I think a lot of times it's easy to kind of write off the things that you did in high school or junior high as irrelevant. And I know for me, when I look back at my past, I'm like, oh wait, no, this has always been there. I just didn't see it yet. So talk a little bit to our listeners about the process to starting Cubicles to Cocktails. I know it's shared pretty in depth in your bio, but I would love to, hear about how what made you say, no, we need to create a firm space for this and not just do a pop-up event. And then 2, to take us back to your first soiree, which also tell us about the inspiration behind soiree. Cause I love that you don't call your stuff events. You say, yes, our next soiree will be, I'm like, yes. I'm out of soiree. I'm fancy. Okay.
Yeah. So, Cubicles to Cocktails, the inspiration came from the happy hours that I would go to after work. And the reason why, not only like for my enjoyment of craft cocktail and like, the bar industry culture, but the reason why I felt like those conversations were so powerful for me and needed for me was because I found myself in a toxic work environment. And that's something that I know a lot of Black women of color, and even just women in general, sometimes we often encounter toxic work environments or toxic work relationships. And so that was my outlet, was to like go to happy hour and just have fun with friends or talk to my mentor and really find like the advice that I couldn't find online as to how to navigate those tricky situations at work. Because, like as a Black woman, if you go into a salary negotiation or if you stand up for yourself, you tread that fine line of being like labeled the angry Black woman and dismissed. So like the way that you have to like figure out how to position yourself and how to like gain the allies in your workplace, it may look different. It does look different. It's not even gonna may look different. It will look different. And so that's like why I started the organization, the platform, and by hosting the first soiree that I had. And sorry, I had a speech impediment growing up and I hear it trying to come out right now. Oh Lord. But the reason why I don't call them soirees is because it is like, it's a cultural experience, right? So Cubicles to Cocktails, the mission is all about advancing and celebrating the careers and cultures of Black and brown women. And at a soiree, it's intimate, it's a cultural experience, it's a celebration. And I wanted to bring that same happy hour vibe, that same type of intimate house gathering, dinner party type vibe to the experiences that I create for Black and brown women. The first soiree, it was all about aligning your careers to your purpose, which is pretty fitting for this podcast, right? And so that first one, I just gathered people in my network and I put it up on Eventbrite. So I invited 3 ladies to join me from my network to sit on a panel who I thought aligned their careers very well to their purpose and to their life's mission. And I placed it up on Eventbrite, told a few girls in my network, and more than 30 people showed up. And it wasn't just all my girlfriends, it was strangers. So that's when I knew that what I was doing was very needed. And so I haven't stopped since.
I always love hearing those origin stories, primarily because in a social media culture, I think it's really easy for people to see where you are now and just be like, oh, sis, woke up like this. And what I also love about those origin stories is that out of all the women that I've talked to on this podcast, people I've just talked to in my network, people I've talked, family, friends, the things that they start are usually organic. It's like, I wasn't trying to launch this business. I wasn't trying to start this organization. I just saw that there were a need. I did what now, as you build your business, you're like, oh, that was market research, posting it on Eventbrite, seeing who would show up. That's seeing if I have a viable product. But then when people came, it's like, yes, there is something to this. And so what made you decide to, again, not just say, oh, that was a really cool event, great experience, kind of put it in my back pocket, but say, I want to host more of these. And then I want to look at how I can continue to expand topics, because that's one of the things that I love about your soirees is that it's always something different. It's not just it's a different theme. It's a different environment. I think I saw you all had an event. It looked like a beauty parlor or something. And so I just love that, one, you're getting into different spaces, but then 2, you're having different conversations. So tell us a little bit about how you come up with the themes for your soirees. And then again, what made you decide this is not just going to be a one-time event. This is something I want to do on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Right. So in year 1 of launching Cubicles to Cocktails, I did not really look at it as a business. I was blogging around that time. This was just a larger, more elaborate meetup for my blog, right? And so I set the goal to host a soiree once a quarter. And I did that, and like for me, my planning process always starts with an intention. And in year one, it was really surrounded about things that my girlfriends and I, once again, would have conversations on. So we talked about, building fulfilling careers. To me, having a fulfilling career is aligning to some aspect of your purpose. So that was story number one. Story number two, oh man, it's been so long. Story number two, I worked with my mentor because she was an inspiration to me, right? And so my mentor came and she talked about authentic leadership. I was reading some research and learned that a lot of Black women, the majority of us, we not only do we know that we code switch, that's a given, but we feel like we can't even authentically show up. So outside of like switching up your hairstyle or your language or your dress, you just feel like you can't even be yourself in the workplace beyond those like surface level things. And so we learned about authentic leadership and did a workshop that she hosted. So that was fabulous. The money talks, like that's like the thing that I love to do every year. We always talk about money in my sister circles and over happy hour. And I am a strong believer in women building wealth. And so that was the inspiration for the third event. And the last event of that year was just a celebration because I just wanted to have fun. I love to host and gather people. And I knew that, in 2018, that this was just the year that we needed to celebrate. I hit some wonderful goals. My girlfriends hit some wonderful goals. Women in the community, they hit some wonderful goals. And so I just wanted to gather us to just celebrate with one another, because that's something that I think we don't do often as women. We don't brag on ourselves often. And so we kicked off that entire evening with a big brag session and lots of champagne toast.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I'm like, shoot, I want to do something like a celebrate, because you're so right. I think especially and as Black women, a lot of us are accomplishment driven, which is not a bad thing to, push for more. But when you never take a moment and step back and say, like, sis, you just published 3 books, you had a baby, you got your master's, whatever your win is, if you never take the moment to sit back and just think about it, then one, it kind of creates this hamster wheel effect where you don't feel like you're making progress. You feel like you're running and running and running, and then you get burned out. But then two, I think it makes you feel like people are always doing better than you. But when you create a space like you did, I think that probably there were women who came to that event who thought, oh, I don't have anything to celebrate. And then a woman said something, they're like, oh, wait, no, I did do that thing at work. Okay, yes. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that. So I think that's really amazing.
That absolutely happened at the event, and you could just feel the energy shift in the room. So I love doing that type of exercise with the women in the community.
So I would love for you to talk a little bit more about advocacy. And I know your email for this week, which y'all, if you guys have to subscribe to Christa's email newsletter every week, it's just, there's so many links in there and so many things. It's like one of my favorite things that I read every week. It's like my own personal like news feed that's actually positive and not making me sad or, want to go eat some ice cream or something. So but I know that this week's newsletter was talking about letting our voices be heard. And I know that you have a big passion for just advocacy. I know that you did a series of Instagram lives about just bridging that gap, the wealth gap and the salary gap. And so talk a little bit about how you are doing that in your own career and, some of those awkward moments you've had with, okay, I'm going to ask for this salary, but I'm not really sure, but like, I don't want to not ask for it. So share that with our listeners.
Mm-hmm. So I think advocacy is one of the biggest skills that we need to learn in order to successfully navigate our lives, our careers, and our businesses if we have one. And so we do focus on that very heavily. A lot of the content that I that I draw upon now. The inspiration is just given, like I gather feedback directly from the community. So I send out surveys all the time. And I think, you know, participating and providing feedback, that is a form of advocating for yourself, because then I could take that information and provide you for what you need, right? And so, but I think, like, you know, with Cubicles to Cocktails, I wasn't always, so like this last newsletter was all about, you know, voting, voting and self-preservation and community care, and what does that look like for us, and how that could feel sometimes overwhelming, but how we need to rest, because that is our right as Black women, as women of color, is to rest, and just truly believing that. And so using that rest and to restore and to heal ourselves, but also continuing to raise our voice to advocate for what it is that we need in this world, what we need for our families and our communities. So I know with the platform, I used to be kind of afraid to like take a more political stance on issues that I strongly believe in. Not just because I am Christian and some of the things that I advocate for, I know other Christians would be like, well, that's not in the Bible. And I'm just like, you know, but God also does give us free will. And though I may not will that for my life, I don't want to will harm on somebody else's life, you know? And so, and then even like in the political landscape, not wanting to offend people who may disagree, like, you know, even right now with Kamala being the VP, not all Black women are happy about that because of her previous experience being a district attorney. And so I just realized that, you know, honestly, like, I need to take a stance. I need to advocate for what I believe is right and what I believe the women in my community, what they believe is right. And I need to provide actionable, just digestible next steps and resources for them, because it does feel overwhelming when you're, especially now, you know, during the pandemic, like you're at home, probably by yourself. Connecting virtually isn't like the most fun. And there's just so much going on with Black Lives Matter, with women's right, with Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing, and just, you know, there's just so much that we need to heal from, that we need to come together and care for one another with, and that we need to continue to raise our voice, even if it does feel tired. We need to still speak up.
No, I think you hit on a lot of things, but I think for me, what stands out the most is that I think as people and as women who are providing community and that have these platforms, there comes a time where, you know, the line is drawn in the sand and you have to decide, am I going to play safe or am I really going to be of service? Because if I'm committed to being of service, then not saying something about this doesn't really position me to be of service. You know, with when the verdict for Breonna Taylor's death came through this week, or the lack of prosecution, I would say, of the officers came through this week, it was kind of like you said, and especially with Black Girls of Purpose, because we are very publicly a faith-based business, right? So it's like, okay, well, how much do you say? You know, do you throw a scripture on there, or do you actually like address how people are feeling? And again, I think not saying things depending on the occasion, because sometimes guys like, nah, girl, because whatever you're gonna say is not gonna be helpful for this conversation. But usually for me, I know I have to say something because not saying something feels heavy. And so I don't want people to feel like, hey, I don't know what's going on in the world. And I think that a lot of people, that is kind of a criticism of the church for sure, but then of the Christian faith, is that, oh, you guys just say like, shut up and pray about everything, but you're not actually getting out here, you're not advocating. And so I think that's something, even for anyone who's listening to this, like if it's pressed upon your heart in this season to start a podcast and talk about topics, or to start blogging, or to send a newsletter, even if you just send stuff to your friends. I know my mother-in-law sends a text every single day, you know, just kind of encouraging us. And so even if you start with that, I think that one, it can be freeing for you because a lot of the things that you may just be circulating in your head, now you have an outlet to share them. But then two, you can spark all kinds of conversations with other people. And it goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning with how you talked about how your soirees even got started. You would be surprised what your obedience will produce when you just host the event or launch the website or whatever the case may be. It 100% leads to the next thing, even if it's not in the direction you thought. I was talking about that to God in my quiet time this morning, just how, there's a scripture in Ecclesiastes that talks about just getting started. Like if you wait for the rain to come, like you're never going to sow the seed. Like you just sow the seed. And so that's really just something that's sticking out to me as you're talking.
Yeah, and I think that's what I really like about my weekly newsletter, is that I feel like it's very spirit-led. I don't batch them. I know best practice would, and that, just like the best practice of having businesses not be political, I toss that out the window, right? Like, it is what it is. I'm a champion for Black and brown women, point blank, period. So our issues, political lies or not, I'm speaking on that now. And the email response that I get back when there's like a subject that I'm like, emotionally, like I want to speak on this, and I feel like the spirit is leading me to speak on it, but I don't want to like trigger, like that's like a big thing that I'm hesitant of sometimes speaking on these heavier issues, is that I know there's just so much trauma that could be triggered by what I choose or choose not to say. But every time there's a heavier subject that I am talking on in the newsletter, there's a sense of relief and release that comes back into my inbox from the women who are reading it, just with positive responses of feeling heard, and having the resources and the know-how to move forward and to forge conversations in their communities and in their sister circles. And so I think it's definitely a spirit-led thing, addressing everything from a place of intention. I overuse that word when I think about anything that I'm creating, from the events to the newsletter, just being really intentional about the message that I want to share and being really transparent too.
So speaking of being intentional is a really great transition, because I was going to talk about your social media presence. It's that same, y'all, I promise y'all I'm not hyping Christa up just because she's like my friend, because she was we were kind of business people first, and then I'm like, no, this girl is really dope and I want her in my circle. But your social media is very intentional, but it's also very engaging, and it's very, it's not just like a cute post, it's conversational. There's actionable items a lot of times. Like I know you posted about finding a career coach. And so I want to know, one, where you get your inspiration, because I know that for a lot of business owners, that's their least favorite thing is social media. And then two, how you navigate re-engaging your audience, because everyone, if you are a business owner, usually you're all the things in the beginning, and everyone has to have that time away. And I think especially this year, a lot of people have been like, hey, I'm just gonna have to take that risk that people aren't following me as much, or my engagement rate might go down because I need to take a step away to heal. So I know that was a two-part question, but I'll say it again. First was where you get your inspiration for your content, and then second, when you do need to take some time away, like how do you get re-engaged with your social media audience?
Yeah. There's definitely, I get my inspiration from my content from everywhere. Like I truly do. But I would say like the main things are my work experience, my life experiences. I read a lot. Once again, that's just the blurred in me. So yeah, I just read a lot. I'm trying not to like jump all over the place because I just went down another tangent of a conversation that we've had previously. And so I find a lot of inspiration from reading, from watching videos, from looking at art, from listening to podcasts. And then, third, I like, once again, just being intentional. What does the community need that I'm serving? So I'm consistently sending out surveys or asking people to respond back to the newsletter and acting on those needs and seeing what themes are in those needs of the community that I am serving. As far as social media, I hate it. I mean, like, people, they compliment me on my social media all the time, but I don't post daily. Sometimes I don't even post weekly. But whenever I post, I do try to make sure that, once again, it's quality content, that it is conversational, that it is providing some type of mindset shift or some type of actionable insight for the from the Cubicles to Cocktails community. And I will say, like, my biggest tip on how to balance the two is to, if you step away, and if you're always if you step away but you're producing quality content whenever you come out, I feel like Instagram is not punishing me right now for doing that. So I think that's like a good way to look at it. It's just not to post, but to like really always try to serve, whether or not it's just like an engaging type of fun post, or like the career coaches. I know a lot of women, they hear about career coaches. You see them all over Twitter, but how many of us are actually hiring them? And how can we, and those career coaches really help you build a fulfilling career and find the career path that you're confident in. So, that's something that I post. And when I disappear and I come back, I feel like my engagement doesn't really suffer. But that's like one way that I balance. And the second way that I balance it, which is more recent, is that I stopped doing it myself. As far as my branding, I actually invested in a lady to design my brand, and that's been really helpful. Because Instagram is a aesthetically pleasing platform, and that was always one of my bigger struggles before I decided to invest in my business that way.
It's cool because it's like you can see my questions, because that was another question I was going to ask is, what has been one of the biggest investments that you've been able to make in your business? Because I think you get to a place where, I know from experience, you get to a place where it's like, okay, sometimes it's your business is booming and there's so much money coming in that you're like, I don't know if I want to part with any of this. But then too, I think the other side of that is, even if you don't have a ton of money, you just feel like, my business is not going to grow. Like we're going to hit our cap if it's going to continue to rely on me. So how did you decide it's time to hire someone or invest in someone, or even just contract out? Because hiring doesn't always mean this person's on my payroll, but I need someone else to help me. How did you come across that decision?
So for me, I guess, like, because this February is gonna be year 3, so my third business anniversary, and I just knew it was time for me to go to the next level, honestly. Cubicles to Cocktails, the soirees that I host and that I curate, they're expensive. They are expensive. And so, like, to go back to a previous question, when you said, like, when did I make the pivot to treating it like a business, when I realized how expensive hosting events were. And so, like, to take my business to the next level, I knew that I was going to need to have a brand that was very nimble and cohesive, so that whenever somebody goes to my social media and goes to my website or goes to my newsletter, they know it's me. As far as, we both hired the same sponsorship coach for our events. And, one of the biggest revenue streams is for my type of platform is business to business revenue streams of marketing and sponsorships and partnerships. And so I think, my business industry aside, for any lady who's looking to take their business to the next level and to make a smart investment, I would say stop doing it yourself on your branding, because you need to have a very strong professional branding, brand presence that sets you apart, so that people, if you take your logo off of something, they could still say, oh, I know that's Cubicles to Cocktails. 2 would be to always invest as close as possible to your revenue stream. So for me, investing in the sponsorship coach makes sense, because that investment would be should be a return of investment if I put the work in. My first hires for my business will be, has been my business development team, because those ladies who are assisting me with the B2B pipeline, so the business to business sales pipeline, they pay for themselves. If you secure a business client for marketing or a partnership, sponsorship or partnership, that's going to pay for their wage, their contract fee, their hourly fee, however you're compensating them. For media companies, the biggest threat to the sustainability of your business is really how fast can you gain market awareness, brand awareness, and capture a part of the market. So the other person that I'm interested in bringing onto the team is a person who marketing and social media coordinator. And that person will help for me to become more consistent with the social media. So that's just kind of like, those, I think very strategically as far as where I'm placing my money and my time investments.
So perfectly said and so well packaged. I mean, it was just great, because I know that I have listened to a lot of podcasts and different things. And I know that Dave Ramsey, he has the EntreLeadership portion of the Ramsey Network, which, that's like his business is $250 million business now. And I know he's not a woman of color, but listen, Dave Ramsey got tips. So whatever, take his tips, take what you need and leave the rest on the floor, as Michael would say. But the thing that I love that you said mirrored something that he said, which he was like, whenever you get to a place where you're hiring, you need to be hiring revenue generating positions, first, and then you can look at the other things. And I also like that you said it depends on your business model, right? Because if you are someone who is a business to consumer person, you might not necessarily need to go straight to getting a social media person, or you might not need to get a sponsorship coach because you sell candles, and so you might need someone else who can make candles. That would probably be a better investment for you.
Somebody help you fulfill your orders, so
absolutely
that you don't have a 2-week window.
Exactly, for deliveries,
right?
And sometimes it's not even a person. Sometimes it's a software where it's like, okay, I've been doing all of my labels. I need to get a software where I can just punch in the packaging, the packing slips, all these things. It may seem like it's small, but
they add up.
They do. And one of the things, listen, and very quickly, where you're like, how did I just spend this amount of time on this? And I think for me, you kind of feel this internal pressure. And I guess my audience is kind of getting a sneak peek, because we'll be, God willing, I'm putting this out there. We are going to be hiring soon. And one of the first things I want to hire is a podcast manager. And part of their responsibility will be landing sponsorship deals for the podcast. Because again, like you said, whether we do 100% commission or you get a specific rate per month, and then also on top of that, you get your commission, cool. I'm not worried about it. If you bringing in $15,000, okay, you want to take five, even if you took 5,000 of that, cool, we good. You know what I mean? Because I didn't have to, that wasn't time I had to spend. And then that frees my time up for other things. And then if you're doing your business budget right, I mean, you can take a $10,000 deal and turn it into $1 million business, depending on where you're investing. So I think that's really, really cool. So speaking of $10,000, I know that you've been able to raise $10,000 this year in the middle of a pandemic. So tell our listeners about that process.
Oh my gosh, girl. Oh man, where to start? So I would say, I would say it starts with prayer. And I will admit, and I know I talked to you, Bree, and Michelle, one of our mutual friends, about like how I just want a stronger prayer life. I'm still working on that, girlfriend, but I was definitely, like just praying about my business. I felt pretty burnt out at the end of last year. Coming into 2020, I knew this was going to be the year where I was going to finally be profitable, very profitable for my business. But then the pandemic hit. But, just in trusting God and just listening to the Spirit guide me through the different seasons that I faced, I was participating in a business plan competition during this time where it was like, God said to rest. So I took time off, literally did not touch anything business plan competition, business strategy, anything business for a couple of weeks when the pandemic first hit. Then God said, it's time for you to reflect. So I'm working on my business plan. I put together this amazing draft that I refined from a previous program that I was in. And in my reflection, I realized that I was not building the right business for me. I was building a business that was very events driven, and this has nothing to do with the market, but this has everything to do with how I feel like God wants to use and like honor the type of personality I am. And so anytime I would think about success, which I know I will be able to achieve that layer of success, I just always felt so overwhelmed. And it just never, like, even like just envisioning the success and knowing it's possible, I just like felt like, do I really want that? Right. And so doing that reflection and learning more about myself and praying and just continue to trust God to guide my steps and to show me the signs, like literally, God, I need to know. Talk to me, speak to me so I can know that what I'm doing. Cause I never really felt like God has ordained my business yet until this season. And so with the reflection, I finally got the answers that I knew that God was sharing with me as far as the type of business model to create for my business. And now it's more digital, it's more conversational, it's more about me sharing resources through that weekly newsletter. And I can still host the events, but it's really more of being that voice piece for the community and that advocate for the community and that resource for the community. So once I did that, God was like, okay, now it's time to act. So I tell you, like, the way that my business plan in this competition, more than 200 people applied. More than 45 of us were competing, so accepted applicants. I placed top 5 and secured $1,000 in funding from that. From there, I learned that GoFundMe was actually doing small business relief grants. And I was honestly pretty embarrassed to go put up a GoFundMe campaign because I didn't want people to look at me like I was begging. But, God told me, do it. My family, my sister, my mom, husband told me, go for it. I put up only $1,000 for my goal, and I hit that right away. So I switched my goal to $3,500, no, to $3,000, and I hit that goal. I ended up securing $3,200 from that campaign, with GoFundMe providing $500 of that towards that campaign through their relief grant. My godmom knew the process that I was going through. She knew that I did the GoFundMe. And so she started sending me resources. And I was able to secure $5,100 through the CARES Act. So the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, where 1,000 of that dollars is a grant, and then 4,500 of it is a very, very low interest rate loan. Like, it's $20 a month, and the payments don't even start until next year. And so, in my business plan, and it's just so surreal, and I'm gonna wrap this up, I promise. But it's like, it's just like a lot to process. I remember I called you, Bree, and I was talking to Michelle. I talked to both of y'all, and I was just like weeping because I'm like, God is like literally like aligning my steps. Like, he has really spoken so clear to me through this whole season. And so in my business plan, when I was doing that reflection and when he was like, okay, now it's time to act, part of my business plan, I was going to self-fund my business $10,000. And now it's like I'm at the position where I can make the decision to still go ahead and self-fund my business $10,000. And that gives me almost $20,000 of working capital to make it through the rest of this season of pandemic, and to hire people, to make my marketing robust, to have working capital so that I can host virtual events. Or I could just decide to, to invest that 10,000 elsewhere, because they say that you need 10,000 really to start a business and to make it grow. And I have the working capital to do that. And so long story short, it was God. It was God speaking to me, and me just challenging him through this season and just being like, look, I want to know with certainty, God, that you are aligning my steps in my business. I want to feel that level of confidence that Brianna and that Michelle carries forward in their businesses for what I have. And if this is not what I should be spending my time on, because Lord, I know this is so much energy. This is an investment of time, money, energy that I could be spending fulfilling my mission elsewhere. Let me know, and please let me know loud and clear. And I just feel like, through that whole process, this whole season, he's been speaking and reassuring through the people who he placed in my life. So I have phenomenal business advisors now, through the networks I've been connected to, through the programs that I've participated in this year and that I'm about to participate in, plus just like the money, something very tangible, something that most businesses need. So, it's a lot, girl.
No, I know. I'm literally over here like tearing up, and I just had to take a second because I was just like, just a behind the scenes listeners, I've started putting myself on mute when my guests are speaking, because I am y'all know, if y'all have been listening for a while, I'm a huge amen corner person. So I'll be like, but sometimes I go back and listen to episodes. I'm like, y'all can't even hear what the person said because I'm in the background, preaching or testifying or whatever. But as you're talking, again, tears coming to my eyes for multiple reasons. One of the things I love that you said is that I felt like God hadn't ordained my business yet. Like, I just want to stop at that for a second, because it is so important. And I know that Tamia from she did God is my CEO tour, and she had a book about it, and she's the host of the Blessed and Bossed Up podcast. But it's not just a cute saying. Like, God really does have to be the CEO of your business. And a lot of y'all don't know, but that's why I started introducing myself as the founder and chief connector, because I'm like, no, I'm not the chief executive officer. I connect people. God connects me to people, but I can't say that I'm the one executing all of these things, because so many things that I do get ideas from come through prayer. I was in my prayer closet this morning, and God gave me ideas, and I just be like, dang, you just be dropping stuff. I always keep a notebook handy whenever I have my quiet time, because I'm like, I came in here to study the Bible and pray, but I know he's gonna give me some wisdom while I'm in here about my business and everything else. That's why he tells us not to be anxious. So love that you said you felt like God hadn't ordained your business. I also love that you said, if I'm going in the wrong direction, like, let me know now, because I was just talking to someone. I promise you, Christa, it might have just been yesterday. And I was talking to them about how for years, I was frustrated that Black Girls of Purpose wasn't blowing up, right? Like when we did the Essence Fest event 2018, summer 2018, I was like, that's it. We out here, like, find us where you can, because we out here. And we weren't on. Like, we went, in fact, God put me back into the quiet place. It was like, okay, so let's just talk about what happened, because you started out like repping me and stuff, and then now you just really excited and you just want to put the Essence logo everywhere. And so, but what he showed me and has shown me, like you said, this year, and I love even that process, the resting, the reflecting, and then the acting. I'm so grateful things didn't take off because I would have, and I mean, I promise you, I was just having this conversation with somebody. I would have been building the wrong business, and we would have had a huge following only to pivot and lose people because they're like, well, I thought you worked with teens. That's what we started out as. We worked with teenagers. But what I saw was, one, when it comes to serving teens, it's never going to be able to be a business to consumer type of business because your teens don't have any money. And so, and if their moms don't have money for the programming that you're offering, guess what, boo? You don't have a revenue stream. So it was still in my heart to do the kind of programming I was doing, but that's why I launched my co-founded my nonprofit Unity Queen, because I said, I don't want these girls to ever have to pay for anything. And if that's a conviction that I have, I don't want them paying for anything or their parents, then we need to find some other source of funding. So that's number one. But then two, even with knowing, okay, we serve millennial women, then it's become clearer and clearer. Okay, we serve millennial women of color in business. Like that's we've gotten so clear cut where, you know, I can say what we do and what we offer very clearly. I went through the story brand workshop by Donald Miller, and every time I would get on, I was like, okay, I'm ready to rebrand Black Girls of Purpose. And I would sit down to write out what we do. And I was like, I still don't really know. I was like, I don't really know. And when it really became clear to me, I had one of the women in our Activate community just talk to me about what it's been like to be a part of the community, what she's gotten out of it. And I was like, and then I asked another friend who's been on the podcast, I asked our friend Jessica, I said, who we both know, I said, you know, why do you listen to the podcast? And she's like, it inspires me. It shows me that I can do something. And so for me to be able to say, wow, as far as the Black Girls of Purpose, the umbrella, we create inspiring content for women of faith in business. Because that is I want you to listen to this and be inspired and be like, okay, I am going to start that business plan, or I am going to get into that program. You know, Christa talking about a business program. There's been this one that I've been thinking about applying to. I'm going to apply, or I am going to apply for a new job, like whatever that is. And then on the Activate side of it, I understood before. I thought, okay, we helping you scale your business, we doing this. And God was like, no. The common theme that I've seen from the women who've come through our Activate community is that we are moving them from idea to action, where whether it's a campaign, or again, you're trying to make a pivot in your business, or you have a specific money goal, whatever it is, we're going to get the idea out of your head and you're actually going to put some footsteps to it. And so I think it's so important for anyone who's listening to this to understand, one, your business is probably going to go through a lot of evolutions, and that's okay. And be patient in that process, because you do not want to grow the wrong business. I think especially if you get to the place where you're creating partnerships with businesses, if you all of a sudden pivot and you offer new things, they like, well, we talked to you because you like you like zoology, and now you saying that you don't like animals at all, but that's why that was a part of our contract. It was that you were going to talk about animals. So for you to talk about, okay, well now I'm going to talk about, and y'all know me, I always give goofy examples, but now I'm going to talk about trees. Well, no, boo, on our contract, you said you're going to do X amount of campaigns about giraffes and zoology. So now for you to pivot, it really hurts your brand and it hurts your business. And then greater than that, as a Christian, it hurts your testimony, because if you're out here telling people, oh, I prayed to the Lord, this is the idea he gave me, and then you switch up the idea, they're like, well, I thought you said God gave you this idea. So which one is it? And then another thing I want you to dig a little bit deeper into, you said this business it doesn't fit my personality. That is huge, because sometimes we want to create something and we're like, I'm burned out just thinking about that. So talk a little bit more about that aha moment of, okay, yeah, events, cool, that's fine, but I don't want to be the event girl. Like, tell us how you felt getting that revelation, and then whatever else you feel led to share from that, because that really stuck out to me too, being authentic to yourself.
So as far as being the event girl, I don't mind if people consider me that, because I'm a project manager and I know how to plan an event, baby. Okay. But as far as building a event-based business, honestly, it was a comparison thing that started me off on the wrong track. And I would not say like a comparison thing in like the negative sense. It was just like what I was exposed to as far as being a new business owner. When you look at Create and Cultivate, when you look at Summit 21, when you look at Girl Boss, these businesses that are that may have similar or adjacent missions, they all had very, very prominent large scale events. And so I thought that was like what I was supposed to do. I thought that was the only way that I could make money in my business and to fulfill the mission that I have for Cubicles to Cocktails. And so that was the path that I was chasing in 2019. I did the tour, and the Money Talks tour, went to Austin, Dallas, and did it in Houston. And that led me to be really burnt out. Like I couldn't do anything once October ended. That was the last event was in Dallas, and I was definitely on fumes. And so entering into March, during the reflection period, which was really more so like the end of March, beginning of April through April maybe, where I was really doing a lot of reflection, I actually took some personality assessments. So I heard of like the Strength Finders assessment, and I've taken a lot of personality and work type style assessments. You may not believe me. I am introverted, but I talk a lot, and I know how to connect with people. I still like to connect with people, but I am an introvert. And so I wasn't really surprised by my top 5 strengths, but with me praying and talking to God and challenging him, I know something's not right with this model. I know something's not right with how I'm pursuing to grow and scale my business. Speak to me. Please align my steps. Show me that my business is ordained. When I looked at those top 5 skills that I have, and this may not be in order, but one was a input. So I love to read things and collect things. It's really just input is all about collecting, and not like in a sense that you're hoarding, but collecting because it makes you happy, or collecting so that you could share with others that experience. Growing up, I used to collect snow globes and figurines. I don't do that anymore, but I do collect reading, like books, articles online. Another one was learner. I just really enjoy the process of learning. Like I mentioned, I'm a blurred, so that didn't really come at a surprise to me, but I enjoy the process of learning. 3 was futurist. And what that means, is actually a term that's newer to me, but being a futurist is somebody who looks at seemingly unconnected ideas and events, and you're able to try to make predictions about what the future will look like, or how these things can impact the future positively or negatively. An example of that, if you look at I'm so tired of saying the pandemic, but it's just a good example. Like the future of travel, right? Because in the future of events, how will that look? Because now people, the flu has always been around, but COVID is a different type of beast. But also what it has made people realize is that in America, at least, we're not very hygienic. So how does this impact events? I don't think there will ever be a day now where we don't have hand sanitizing stations at events. It has also brought us back towards more intimate events. It definitely sped up the evolution of online technologies. Like they say, as far as online technologies, we skipped ahead 50 to 100 years in how fast this technology has ballooned in just this short span of time. So when I think about how that applies to me, it's just looking at the future of what Black career women, what we will be in the future. Like I could imagine a world where we are the Fortune 500 companies. which would be phenomenal, which will be amazing. And so like, how do we get there? Then of course, getting blown away by my ideas. I feel like I'm talking too much and I forget the fifth one. So I'm gonna wrap up. But so I took this assessment and I realized that, this whole time, my personality I've always known myself, but I haven't really taken the time to look at my strengths, my vision, my ideas, the future, and how those align and meld together and how they fit me and my purpose so that I could build a business that's around there. So instead of being events driven, which events are very needed, I am community driven. I'm resource driven, and that newsletter, just me being able to do what I do on the everyday, reading, inputting, learning, and wanting to share that with others to help us all move towards that idea of what the future can look for us. That's like how my business is now. So doing my weekly newsletter, it makes sense. Doing virtual events and having like a virtual gathering space, it makes sense. Continue to do events to build that community, makes sense. But what doesn't make sense, at least not right now, is trying to do 4 conferences that brings in 200 people in a year, or even thousands of people in one event. That doesn't make sense. So that's kind of like, so now when I look at the vision of success, it doesn't overwhelm me. I'm like, I could do this, and I feel sure about it.
Yeah, it's like a cup of tea, just a warm cup of tea. Because I think that it goes back to prayer. And when we talk about, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything with thanksgiving in your heart, make your requests known unto God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Like, literally, y'all, that is not just a thing that God says in Philippians, that he has Paul write in Philippians. It's so true. Just this morning, I was anxious about something. I prayed about it. I opened my Bible and there was the scripture that answered. I was like, this is why you say to pray. Like, it's literally a conversation. You pray and he answers. And yes, sometimes it's not that clear cut where you read, you pray, and then you open your Bible and there's a scripture that speaks to what it tells you what to do. But it can be that clear, but you don't even know if you're not praying. And so I think that's so wonderful. And again, I'm just grateful that you had that self-awareness. So now I'm going to transition to our up close and purposeful segment. So these are questions that we asked all of our guests on the Black Girls of Purpose podcast. And my first question is, what does it mean to you to be a Black girl with purpose?
Such a good question. To me, being a Black girl with purpose is being somebody who does everything with intention and walks in alignment with God, and is somebody who tries to make sure, when you are in alignment with God and when you are in alignment with your mission and your purpose that God puts you on this earth, that you're doing everything with intention in order to fulfill that calling that he has placed on your life. So I think that's like being a Black girl with purpose, what that means to me.
So what are some of the scriptures that you go to whenever you need encouragement?
Girl, you about to call me out, because I do not be knowing my where to go. I have them bookmarked in my phone. I don't have my phone by me, but the Philippians one, the do not be anxious. I am an anxious person. I'm a worrier. I'm a planner. And so that's one. Do not be anxious about anything, with all things. Come to me in prayer, with prayer and thanksgiving, supplication. I love that one. I meditate on that one often. Another one of mine is the one about the prayer of Jabez. I love that song. I love that scripture. Well, that chapter, I think is beautiful. God, enlarge my territory, keep me from harm. It's just such a beautiful type of prayer and request to be made known, to God. So that's another one. preparing my table in front of my enemies, girl, that one be that one right there got me through when I was in the toxic workplace. Oh, I meditated on that all the time. It was just like, God, like, I know I'm here right now. Just give me the strength. I know you see my tears. I know you could count them. I know you see my lashes. I know you can count them. But I also know that you're preparing a table for me in the presence of my enemy. And you're gonna protect me. And yes, this sucks. It really does suck, but you are preparing a path for me to walk down where at the end of the day, you're gonna have the glory. So those are three of my go-tos. Very much, I think the prayer of Jabez is the only one that's not very much about the struggle. Everything else, it's like it's about the struggle. But that's the season, like I'm about to turn 30. This is it's a struggle to till and to cultivate. Like, that's not fun. And then, like, they talk about harvest season. Like, baby, that is not fun either. Like, harvesting is not fun. But I think, they always say your 20s and your 30s, that's the time for you to plant your seeds and for you to start reaping and for you to start harvesting those seeds. So I just know, like, I think those are like my favorite verses for this season of life. Maybe that may change once I'm like reaching 40, but for right now, those get me through.
That's good. Yeah, I love the prayer of Jabez as well. And I also love that he said, like, keep me from harming other people. I think as people who are business owners, that's something that all of us should keep in mind is like, Lord, don't let me launch nothing that's not going to be of service to someone, or don't let me say anything, that's not going to be of service to someone, because people do take what you say very seriously. Mm-hmm. What is something that you are grateful for in this season of your life?
I feel like I'm grateful for so much. I'm grateful for stability. I know, like, this season is just it's really rough for people. I'm grateful for health. I'm grateful for my family's health. I could just go on and on about things that are seemingly simple, but this season has definitely just made me so grateful for things that we often take for granted. So.
Absolutely. I think the past few weeks, everyone that I've asked that question to, everyone said either health or family or both. And I find myself even waking up in the morning and be like, Lord, thank you that I got out of bed and my legs worked. Because you just don't, like, even stuff like that. Like, okay, yeah, I know you could see when you went to bed, but you could wake up and not be able to see out of one eye. Or, like, I mean, right. And these are things I know have happened to people. So I'm not just being in some kind of, girl, that's a crazy thing to think about. I know people who have gone through those things. And so it does kind of change your perspective. This is a question I don't normally ask during the Up Close and Purposeful segment, but I do want to ask because I know community is so important to you. Tell us about some of the women in your sister circle, your friends, and how they have helped you to stay on the path to purpose. Because it's not, I was talking to someone, y'all think being a business owner is glamorous, and it is just not. Like, it's great. And when you put your foot forward and you have a vision and you see it come to life, it is amazing. But baby, you put a lot of work in before you get to that, oh my gosh, look at what's happened moment. So tell us about your sister circle. And I love that you call it sister circle, and then how they help you stay aligned with your purpose.
Yeah. So, man, there's not so many, but they're so robust. Like, they're big personalities. So I have a core group of friends from Rice University. We all met on campus, and we still are tight knit to this day. And then, like, thinking about, like, Michelle, you, and Ashley Cockrell. When I think about all of you collectively, one, like, just keeping each other encouraged and covering each other in prayer. I would say like that's like one of the biggest things is that we pray for one another and we're transparent with our struggles in our faith and our health and in our lives, in our finances, and we keep one another covered in prayer. And when one is too weak or just going through some type of period where they just feel distant or disconnected, you know, like the others are covering. I think that's like really important. I think just on the intellectual level, just being able to share your ideas and have somebody hype you up. But then when you're ready to get the holes punched through it, having people who are capable of like, you know, giving you that direct critical feedback as to like what gaps are missing or how you could have done better. That's really important. And just fun, you know, so it's just fun, like getting together and toasting with champagne or talking about the latest movie or we don't really do a lot of celebrity gossip, but we do talk about celebrity gossip in the sense of cultural impact. So dissecting like that type of news, and it's just really fun, you know, so it's so much. I could go on and on. You said tell me about the ladies, and I'm like talking about the relationship, but the ladies, CPA, nurses, marketing communications, pharmacists, creative writer, like we're just such a fun, well-rounded bunch of amazing, phenomenal Black women moving and shaking in this earth.
I love having that diversity in a space as well, because I think when you do have women in different industries, then it is sometimes that sparks creativity, because you would come, you just come in bringing different perspectives than other people would bring. And I love that you said, when you've created that kind of relationship, you are willing to have people say like, nah, sis, that's, you know, you could probably make that a little bit better. Or I know just this week you looked over my one sheet that I was going to send over to some people. And so being able to have extra eyes is always helpful. I think that's one of the best things I've learned in business, is not to take things personally and to realize when people are giving you feedback, it doesn't help them at all. Like, it's only helping you. So just take what you need. So my second to last question is, what is next for Cubicles to Cocktails? I know you touched on some of the things throughout this episode, but what can people expect from your community next?
Right. Oh my gosh. So much possibilities. I would say, you know, what's next? There's always another newsletter coming out every Friday, which is always next. I love the newsletter. But as far as other things that are in the pipeline, I am working hard to figure out how can I keep us connected digitally. That may look like a community group, like you know, as simple as a Facebook group, or it may look like just having a frequent kind of like, you know, pop-up type of virtual watering hole style events. I don't know. I'm still toying with the idea, but more connections online. Definitely some workbooks, and also just sharing my knowledge as a project manager. I know I've created a resource called Impact Over Productivity. I'm planning on building that out to be more robust, because I do not believe in overworking. I used to tie my value to my level of success, and I had to dismantle that. I used to tie my value to my level of productivity, and I had to dismantle that. And so you could definitely expect resources of me providing mindset shifts when it comes to how we look at our relationship with productivity and success, and how we really should look at it and what that really means, so that we could lead with impact over just being productive just because. So that's another thing to expect. Once things open back up, of course, we're gonna, you know, reconvene in person, which I'm excited for. But
I think that's another thing too, though, that this pandemic has brought about, is like not being pressed. You know what I mean? Because even a lot of people that had, myself included, events that were planned that had to just keep getting postponed. It's like, sis, I would rather just wait and see how things are opening up and then say, okay, now we're going to do something, versus saying, okay, it's going to be March, it's going to be April, it's going to be May. All right, it's coming soon. So yeah, I love that intentionality. So how can our community best support the work that you're doing? And then my last one, and I said it's technically not a question. So my last thing, I always love to have our guests share like one last piece of knowledge or encouragement for our audience.
How can you best support me? Honestly, like, I'm gonna say this again, but sign up for the newsletter. And when there's a newsletter that resonates with you or that you find something valuable, reply back to me and let me know, and or forward that newsletter to your girlfriend and let them know about what excited you about that newsletter. Like, that really just keeps me going, to know that there's like a like that person-to-person connection between me and the women who are part of this community. That gives me a lot of fuel to just get those responses back, because I know I'm doing something right and doing something meaningful. As far as the one piece of advice, I'm gonna say rest. I'm going to say rest. I do not believe in working twice as hard to get half as far. I know that is something that we have often grown up hearing from elders in our community, and we pass it down for generations. I think productivity and capitalism can be very toxic. And I think that is a generational curse that we need to break for our own households. So rest and prayer, rest by napping, rest by taking the day off and honoring the Sabbath. I know, Bree, that's something that we've talked about. So rest.
Yes, y'all, it's so necessary. And again, going back to, and I know we have women, and you yourself are a career woman who also has another business, but I just feel really led to talk to people who are building businesses. You would think that you would be like, oh, hustle, grind, do, but you will burn yourself out, and you will not build anything if you do not take time to rest. I feel like some of the biggest aha moments or creative flowing moments are moments where I just took a time to step back and sit down or write with a notebook or sit in silence, which, y'all know I have 2 children. So the sitting in silence happens very rarely, but when it happens, it's a wonderful moment. So I love that. Tell our listeners how they can connect with you in terms of your social media, your website, all of those things.
So you could connect Cubicles TO, so cubicles2cocktails.com. All of our social handles are Cubicles2cocktails on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. And if you want to connect with me on a more personal level, you can follow me on Instagram at Hey, Hey, like hey, Christa Clarke.
Awesome. Well, y'all, I'll be sure to put all of those links in the show notes. And I'm also going to put a link to the Strengths Finder test, because I know a lot of y'all are probably like, oh, I wonder what my top 5 strengths are. And it really can help you, whether you're building your business and want to know what kind of business model to build, or if you are looking to kind of pivot in your career and you want to know what jobs you should be looking for, that'll definitely be a great assessment. So thank you so much, Christa, for being on the podcast. I know women are going to be encouraged by listening to this. You gave a lot of actionable items, which just really shows, like, that's what I love about Cubicles to Cocktails. It's such a direct reflection of you. And when I went to your first event last year when we met, I was like, yes, I just need to be around this more often. And so the same nuggets and steps you offer in your newsletter is really what you've given to our audience today. So I really appreciate you for it.
Thank you so much, Bree. I appreciate it too.